going to get started since we're all here. Welcome to the finals of the National Public Speaking Competition, the 21st finals of the National Public Speaking Competition. It has been a very long journey for some of you, and considering yesterday, which was quite a long day, I'm sure you felt like the finals would never come, but here they are. I'm not going to be very long because I know you're probably all very excited to get started, but there are just a few things that I'd like to say in the beginning. I would like to start by, first of all, thanking the Jockey Club for hosting us today. This is the third year that we've had the finals at the Jockey Club, and would like to thank the Vice Presidents, Constantina Varamescu and Dan Făcănescu-Aron, for allowing us to have the competition here today. Also, there are some sponsors which I'd like to thank for the goodie bags that you're going to receive at the very end. Editura Niculescu, Uniscan, and Fisher Educational. Obviously, there are only a few teachers here. More have contributed to the development of the competition and to everything that the competition is nowadays. So I'd like to thank all of you that are here today, but even to those that are not present here today, for helping improve the competition and getting stronger and stronger. Because 21 years ago when we started, it was just in Bucharest, just one high school. And now we have kids from all over the country participating in the finals of the competition. So that is quite wonderful. Also, I would like to thank Mr. Robert Bondoroi for accepting to be our chairperson this year as well. So thank you very much for that. And our timekeeper, who will be keeping time. And yes, that's a very important job. And also, I would like to thank our esteemed adjudicators for today, Mr. Duncan Motherson from the British Council Romania. I would like to thank Kendall Pete from the International British School of Bucharest. And we also have Ms. Anca Dimcea for the Ministry of Education. And I guess with that being said, I can give the floor to Mr. Bondoroi to introduce the first speaker. I would like to wish all of you the best of luck. And perhaps since yesterday we had silent and mental applauses, we can have another big round of applause before we get started. So for yesterday, yeah?
Present a 5-minute long speech. This means that you'll be hearing a knock at 4 minutes and 30 seconds, 5 minutes, respectively 5 minutes and 30 seconds, which means that you should be stopping. For each speaker, there will be 3 minutes when the audience or the honorable jury will have to address questions. When posing the question, please rise and remain standing while you receive the answer. Okay. Turn off your cell phones, please, and let's give another clap to wish them good luck. At the end of the competition, during the deliberations, the audience will receive these small leaflets. Pay attention to the speaker's name or the content of his speech, because at the end you'll have to write the name of your favorite speaker who will receive the Audience Choice Awards. When you've done that, okay, during the coffee break, please hand these leaflets to my colleague Nicolette over here. Thank you. So, let's get started. Fighting the time, timing the fight.
Imagine you are in an exam hall. All you hear is the sound of the clock singing its 2 notes. Tick, tock, tick, tock. So you struggle to manage your time, and to you the questions appear unanswerable. You look up for inspiration, you look down in desperation, and left and right for information. Suddenly, time is up, pencils down. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is George Costin Dobrin, and that was not the beginning of a nightmare. That's what happens when you try to mess with time. I can relate to some of my previous experiences that have taught me valuable lessons about fighting time. Each year, NASA organizes the Space Settlement Design Competition for high schoolers all around the world. And I love it. But there is one thing that I don't like. That part called the deadline. Each year, the struggle is the same, sending the project in time. That is why, this year, my team and I made a promise that we would not ignore what had happened in the past and that we would use the past experiences to help us in the future. So, we started working on the project 5 months earlier than last year. But it didn't make any difference. It was 11 o'clock, 3 hours before the deadline. We met at the printing center to print our project, and all we had to do was to merge all of the chapters into one file. As we were working, the laptop stopped. Restart. 30 minutes passed until finally it turned back on, but we had lost all of the unsaved work. Then it started to settle in, 1 hour remaining. Then we couldn't find one of the chapters. 15 minutes left. We are not going to make it. Just when we thought we were screwed, we got a phone call. There was one more flight leaving in 1 hour. Last chance. The laptop gods were finally on our side and we had the document, but we still had to print it. 200 pages. And there were only 20 minutes left. But we did it. We sent the project just 10 minutes before the deadline. In the end, I asked myself, did I send the project in time? Well, yes. But did I beat time? No. Another situation when time is definitely not on my side is at the Olympiads. Each year I take part in science Olympiads, and before entering I give myself a small pep talk. It goes something like this. You got this. You came here prepared and you know how to tackle every possible subject. Now let's go get it. The supervisors are walking around making noise on the wooden floor, and it's pretty hard to concentrate. The next thing I know, I hear them saying that we have 15 minutes left and that we should get closer to finishing, but I still have one more problem to solve. My desk is a complete mess with scratch papers everywhere and test papers somewhere between them. Fortunately, I usually finish on time, but still, do I beat time? The answer is still no. So I have shown you 2 examples of how time is pressing me, but time can grind you in the other way around as well. We all have that one class at school that we hate the most and that seems to never end. For me, that class has to be psychology. Each second feels like a Chinese drop, and there are 3,000 drops in 50 minutes. I get this image popping up in my mind. The watch with its tiny miniature parts twisting and turning inside, and it keeps adding to my frustration. When it gets really boring, I wish I could take my watch and throw it against the wall and hope that it dies. It would be pointless, I get it, because time doesn't work that way. It goes on and does not account for any of my crazy actions. By now, I think it is clear that no matter how hard you try, you cannot master time. You will never beat time, but that doesn't mean that you must not fight against it. Whenever you will ask yourself the question, did I beat time? The answer is going to be no. But you should always keep challenging time, and you should always keep challenging yourself. Because when you stop challenging yourself, you begin to waste your time. Back to the exam now. The blank paper in front of you represents your future, and the pencil represents your actions. Go on, begin work, and write your own story. Good luck, and thank you. Please. ALIN.
Could possibly Cicero, by realizing that the ignorance of the past is to remain a child, conquer time?
Thank you for the question, and I know a great quote exactly on your question. I will borrow it from the Egyptians. It says that man fears time, but time fears the pyramids. So we are so small in the face of time, but the pyramids can stand the test of time. So I think that Cicero, as wise as he was, could have never possibly beaten time. No one is big enough and wise enough to stand the test of time. So, thank you. CATALINA.
You talked about fearing deadlines. Does this mean that you are the person who leaves everything for the last moment? And even if you are or not, what would you say to the people who also fear deadlines?
Thank you for your question. Well, I think that deadlines are great in the fact that they challenge us. But then I think that they are not so good because also they challenge us. So challenging is both good and bad. But if I met someone who told me, hey, what can I do? I'm struggling with deadlines. I would tell him, hey, that's how time works. You have to keep challenging yourself and keep challenging it. And in the end, you will learn a lot from it. Thank you. Yes.
Consider a building in ruins as a metaphor for the past. What would you rather do? Rebuild the building, start repairing it, or start to build a new one?
Thank you for your question. Well, I think that rebuilding it would be quite hard. I think it's important in life to start from ground zero and to keep building new things. You don't have to go in the ruins and do something with them. You have to start from zero, you start from scratch, and then you see what you can do later.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next to speak is GHERGHE ANDREI, the temporal loop.
(1945). An inexplicable shockwave rocks the train out of place. A giant fireball lights up the sky. Poisoned waters, massive casualties. Hiroshima and Nagasaki just experienced the dreadful power of 2 atomic bombs. After 20 years though, just as the green of the grass became green instead of red, water starts behaving as if it's actually H2O, and a straw waltz is heard in the air, another 2 bombs explode. 20 years later, another 2, and so on and so forth. Imagine a temporal loop made by humans that causes the bombs to be dropped over and over again every 20 years. The human pressing the bomb deploying button has probably been watching a soccer game during the school history class. But thank God we're living during the post-bombing times. Or are we? People played with fire again, and so we had the Chernobyl explosion. Tremendous amounts of radioactive graphite filled the atmosphere, colossal death toll. Yet today, the bombings and Chernobyl look like so distant time events that it seems as if humanity has learned its lesson, but have we? Let's think about Ebola. More than 6,000 deaths. Imagine that in the beginning there was 1 case. Just as everyone thought it was eradicated, the second one appeared, then a third, then a fourth, and so on. Doesn't it look like a deja vu with much heavier dramatic repercussions? Of course it does. So I'm inviting you to ask yourselves, what is the critical mass number that must be attained in order to stop ignoring the possibility of the virus spreading globally? 500 million, 1 billion, 4 billion, 7 billion, or more. Now, the bombings, Chernobyl and Ebola may not get the attention of the usual 21st century citizen who is somewhat selfish and perhaps not so interested in the world's social problems. But let me tell you a story. A man was chopping a tree, day after day, until he finally reached the middle of the trunk. His axe became badly worn out, but he kept chopping, obviously in vain. A man, passing by, told him, "Hey man, let's get your axe sharpened. You'll get nowhere with that blunt razor." The other one replied, "Yeah, that sounds like a great idea, but you know, I can't do that right now. I have to finish cutting this tree down." So if we are to concentrate on what we're doing instead of how we're doing it, we might end up in some temporal loops with profound consequences. Imagine an open sewer mouth that causes a deadly accident, or heck, even a surgeon forgetting his mobile phone in the place of a just removed appendix, like getting out of the surgery room and getting an email notification out of your abdomen. Lucky patient, isn't it? Now, probably you're all agreeing with what I've said until now, and everyone would answer, yes, something should be done. And that is exactly why nothing is being done. There is no I in the sentence. Something should be done. So my resolution to stop the temporal loops is you, and by that I mean every one of us. Let's not wait for a law to start doing things differently. And not just the things that matter to us, because our selfish part is already taking pretty good care of that anyway. Because if you as a doctor had been more careful and no incident had occurred, wouldn't you, the patient, have gotten out fine from the surgery room? Everything we do somehow gets upon us as well. We're living inside a globe, not on an infinite surface. So I'm asking you, what kind of people would you like to show up in your life? Ignorance of the past or responsible ones? Hint, vote for the second option. Do you know what to do for that to start happening? Just begin being responsible yourselves. Don't worry about the others. You starting should be enough. Thank you.
Okay, so if we think of Ebola and nuclear bombings as viruses, can we find the antidote to all these viruses of the 21st century? And if so, how?
Thank you for your question. Well, I think that we could find eventually a cure because as with any virus, there must be an antidote. That this is usually how the case goes, even though we don't always have. We can try and do our best to find new solutions for the antidote, for the cure. And I think that if every one of us tries in their own way, with their own possibilities, not trying to push too hard to have unrealistic expectations, then in that case, we might just as well find a cure for any problem.
Thank you. If you would find yourself in a leading position in life, how would you motivate people to get something done?
Thank you for your question. Well, motivation is a really subjective thing because everyone has a different kind of approaching things and we are motivated in different ways. Some people are motivated by fear and some people are motivated by reward. It just depends on the person. But I think that I would try to find a common kind of approach to motivate everyone. I'm not yet sure what I would do. Probably I would find in that position because I would have had more time to research this. But the point that I would try to solve would be finding a common way of motivating everyone and in a positive way as well.
Thank you very much.
Until the Kyoto Protocol that called upon climate change actions, global leaders and governments hadn't taken any action against climate change. So, but you said that legislation doesn't quite actually drive change. So, what would your suggestion be besides empowerment? Because we all know that empowering people is quite difficult.
Thank you. Well, obviously, not obviously, but legislation is a hard thing because people don't always quite respect the rules. Rules are meant to be broken after all, most of the times. And due to that, we must find something that also makes us feel good in the way. So probably the best case would be trying to send out a message and to make everyone feel good about trying to stop climate change in a way that is not like, no, don't do that, don't throw that on the ground, don't leave your lights open and the tap water too much flowing. So, but instead a different approach, something along the lines of trying to make people feel good, like, okay, great, you've turned the lights off, you've just extended the life of Earth for, I don't know, several years. But something that makes people feel good about them and in a non-obstructive way, not in making them guilty for not doing the right thing, but instead positive reinforcement, because usually positive reinforcement is better than negative criticism. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Backdoor.
If I were to describe myself with one word, it would be walk. I walk. And I love walking. While I walk, I gather information. Now one day I came across a sentence. To be ignorant of the past is to remain a child. I looked at it and had no idea what it meant. But I had to, in order to continue my path. Now, I have got that the necessary concept to understand anything in life is to analyze everything from the bottom. So let's take it to the big bang of humanity. Physics, geometry, squares, circles. Everything is a human-defined concept. The human mind pictured three united lines in space and named it a triangle. Well, so did we with the concept of childhood. The human mind defined childhood as being a pure and natural period in our lives. So childhood means purity. How could Cicero put it in the same box with ignorance? Well, here, lads, the most disguised act of mankind adds to equation. Mistakes. Fellow auditory, respected judges, and dear travelers into this big road of life, I'm here to present you not only what my intuition has guided me towards, but how important it is to see both in front and backwards into this big quest of life. Now, nobody's perfect. Quite the contrary, we are surrounded by mistakes every day, and our bad calls haunt us from the past. I'm not a good caller myself, and mistakes have affected everything in my life, even this speech. Oh, but since history books have not yet mentioned my name, I'm just a fish in a big sea. But it's the same if we look at the bigger picture. Let's take Napoleon and Hitler, for example. They both added salt to injury by being ignorant in their war conquests against Russia. So the really question we face today is, do we want to have this type of childhood, or do we want to build our own path? Now, as I stated, we think. We build, but most importantly, look around you. We create. And my biggest creation so far is seeing life as an empty road filled with two doors at each challenge I have to face. Now, the thing with these doors is you can only choose one from two, obviously. And once you've chosen one, the other one closes forever. After you pass this challenge, at the next one, two more doors will kick in, and this goes on and on until we create our own reality. When you're a child, and you crawl softly on this road, you cannot open a door. More important, if you would see such a big scary thing as a door in your path, you might catalog it as a monster and crawl back with fear. But then your mother came. She reached for her pocket, took out a big golden key, and opened that door for you. She smiled, and she invited you to keep walking. And then you grow, of course, and you build your own consciousness. And the healthy human mind makes you want to have more, to get more, to open more and more doors, to finish this race we call life on the first place. But that, my friends, makes us ignorant. It fills our ears with stubbornness, and it makes us do not take remark of anything that is being told to us, not even by our mother. But we keep walking. And in the point in our life, we get to another challenge. Well, this isn't a normal challenge. This challenge is represented by two big golden doors. A big golden door might need a big golden key. A big golden key. You look back, you see numerous open doors in your path, but you can't see your mother anymore, who had that key, because you were ignorant. And then you lean against the door, and you start sobbing. The first instinct of human mind is to think of luck. Maybe if I stare at that door for 2 seconds, it will open. But luck doesn't add to equation here. That little man could not open the door because of his inability to get to the handle. And that grown-up man, because he didn't see the answer back there. But history is written by the victor. And we need to get that open to be victorious in life. And so are we, grown-ups, stuck in this purgatory of our own creation, not because we didn't seek the answer in front of us, Not because we didn't saw how many doors we have in our path, but because we failed to seek the answer where it was most important, in our past. Thank you.
Could there be situations in which you have 3 doors instead of 2 doors?
Thank you for your question. First, I would like to explain myself why I've chosen only 2 doors, because we know in life that we have 10 doors. The human mind tends to overthink, tends to analyze a lot of situations. But let's think of when you choose high school. You have to choose to go mathematics or informatics or philology. So you just put all the real ones into one door and the other ones into one door. So you have to squeeze all your options into 2 doors to have a better insight in life. It's all about seeing it. It's all about perspective, and I find that this is the best one. Thank you.
Marinescu, Catalina Yolanda, History, Window to Future.
A few weeks ago, I had to babysit my twin 6-year-old cousins. And what surprised me that night was the open craving of small children for family stories. They often come back to them asking for more details and, well, gathering the information in a way that suggests it is almost as necessary to their growth as food. So why do we grow out of love for history over the years? Most of you hate history. I know that for a fact because I've hated it too for a very long time, thinking it was a useless subject. I hated the fact that I had to learn years and years of wars and peace treaties and alliances and so much information that I simply rejected. But what made me realize that history is so much more than just a school subject was my own diary. I've been keeping a diary for about 2 years now, and thinking of how my children and grandchildren and who knows, maybe grand-grandchildren will read it, I've come to realize that we are history, and we are history for ourselves, and we are history for others. And this is just like Michael Crichton once said, if you don't know history, you don't know anything. You are a leaf that doesn't know it is part of a tree. So let me ask you this now. Have you ever seen those time lapses where they show plants growing up from small tiny bulbs to huge trees or flowers? Or even more common if you want, the phases that caterpillars go through before turning, well, into beautiful butterflies. When I hear the word history, these kind of images pop up in my mind. You probably think, well, okay, caterpillars into butterflies, why does that have to do anything with me? Well, our connection to them can be reduced to one simple word: evolution. If you think about it, cultures consist of ideas and values and beliefs that shape people. But during their lives, these people shape these ideas and values and beliefs they were born with. So it is simultaneously true to say that people are trapped in history, and history is trapped in people. If you want an example for that, just think of the generation gap. What seems normal to me may seem out of the normal league for my parents. Of course, on the other hand, there is a popular adage in our society that goes something like this: forget about the past and don't worry about the future, just, live in the moment, carpe diem. Well, there is a grain of truth in this statement because far too many of us live defined by the choices we once made. And this shouldn't be the case. If you attend a circus, you'll see elephants walking in meek compliance. And this is just crazy because these massive creatures could break just about anything humans could possibly engineer. Yet they don't move. Well, actually, this is accomplished through careful training by securing the baby elephant with heavy chains that he cannot break. And every time the little guy tries to wander away, he's violently pulled back and he eventually gives up. Of course, over the years, the heavy chains are replaced with simple and cheap ropes, but the elephants never bother testing the strength of the rope because, well, simply put, the desire to run is gone. And I think this is just like us. When we let our past choices rule the way we live our present, we become our limitations. the way I see things, the past is a great place of reference, but the worst place of residence we could ever find. When I look back into my past, I see pain and mistakes and heartache. I see the 7-year-old me, a lot shorter than I am now, trying to introduce myself in front of the classroom, and I see myself bursting out into tears and running out the door. But then I see myself now, and I'm still as scared as I was back then. My hands are still trembling, and honestly, I really want to get out the door, but I'm not. So I think I've come a really, really long way. So I think this is why history is important, because it helps you find yourself in the middle of all the action. Because history is not about others. History is about me, and it's about you, and it's about every single one of us. So what choice will you make tomorrow after you leave here? Will you still see your past mistakes as memories you'd give anything to be able to forget about? Or will you see them as the steps you've taken towards the person you are today? Thank you.
Well, you told us in the beginning that most of us find history boring, and I agree with that. But I want to ask you, how should we learn history, and how should we view it in order to find it more interesting?
Well, if you were to ask me, I wish that in my history class our teacher would, I don't know, show us the movies or show the effects that all these catastrophes have on people, not only write in the notebooks, learn it by heart, and say the next class. And I think this is just plain boring, and I didn't like history at all because of that. But now, because I've prepared my speech, I see it kind of differently. And I try to make myself, it's boring, but please, Catalina, please keep trying to learn that and try to see the fun in it. Thank you. Sure.
Okay. Look at your life as a short commercial. What images would you present in it to at least give the viewers a smile?
What images would I present? Well, I think I'd show my childhood, because I really had a happy childhood and I was surrounded by love. And because of this love of the people that love me, the friends, the family, I was able to form like a circle around me, and all the hatred that was projected towards me, I was able to reject it and keep everything that was bad out of it. So I think this is the image that I want to portray about the life I've led this far. The image of happiness, the image of childhood memories.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Sure.
You said you hated history at school because there were too many dates and too many names to learn. Why do you think we have to learn in school?
Why do I think we have to learn in school history? Probably because
It's not a debate, thank you.
I will say that this is the only way we can learn. Like, if you don't know who exactly did what, you are not able, if you hear, there was a war some time ago, and you're like, where was this war? Who started this war? And if you don't know these details, you are not able to get, the full image, all of it, the picture. I think that's why we have to learn this way, this much information. Thank you for your question.
Time for one more question. Our fifth speaker is ELIF, Emotions.
I am a female voter in a world once doubtful of women's power. I am the only girl in a class of 10 boys. I was proud to be the only one to represent the female gender in the national finals of this competition last year. And in all of these situations, I've been neither prejudiced nor disadvantaged. My name is ELIF MEMET, and today I'd like to talk about women's law and how little we know about our immense influence on the humankind past, our huge power in the present world, our mission in the future. Last year, I exercised for the first time my right to vote in a country that acknowledged women's suffrage only 85 years ago. In that voting booth, I realized the importance of my decision. Years of struggle for my vote, for your suffrage, dear ladies, for our democracy, honorable gentlemen, for our equality, dear all. For us, women, looking back to the past, it's usually been painful, because what we learned would be the denial of our role as decision makers. We learned that women had not done this and they had not done that, and that essentially, according to a traditional view, women had contributed very little to the shaping of human society, which is not true, of course. Women do have a history in achieving greatness. And this is the problem with us nowadays. It hurts us when we see that women are oppressed in African countries, when girls born in remote villages rarely attend school, not to mention the board of a company, or when a female surgeon is not as trusted as a male one before intervention. I believe that the problem lies deeply in education. Because our history textbooks do not focus on female pioneers, women do not trust their potential to impact the world, and men are educated to believe that they were the founding fathers of history. Well, should any one of you believe this, regardless of your gender, let me tell you that there were founding mothers too. And in the same spirit, please allow me to tell you a story. It's about Gerda Lerner, the founder of the study of women's history. The time was probably the 80s, and at that time, at Harvard, there was no program for the study of women's history. So Gerda was invited to be a speaker. She had to convince the men from the history department that such a program was needed. A gentleman was asked to introduce Gerda. He stood up and said, "I believe the speaker has written some books, which I haven't read, but she does have 2 children." Gerda stood up and replied, "I would like to tell this gentleman that my husband and I have 2 children, and I have written 9 books." Women made history. Gerda is one example. Marie Curie is another example. Mother Teresa is an icon. But how many of our textbooks did mention that Flossie Wong, a female scientist, was the first person to find a connection between HIV and AIDS? My textbooks didn't. My teachers didn't. However, I was lucky enough to grow up with the example of a powerful woman, my mother. After my father's death, throughout the years, I saw my mother struggling to be everything that she could be for the 2 remaining members of her family, my sister and I. I saw her fretting, yet I saw her doing extra work and handling a second job because she did not want us to feel underprivileged. Ever since, I've wanted to emulate her strength of never giving up in spite of challenging circumstances. My mother is an example too. For me, she created history. So dear ladies, if our textbooks do not focus on female pioneers, then let yourselves be inspired by your mothers. Dear gentlemen, until an educational reform is done, discover that beneath your father's strength lies your mother's support. And then, dear all, delve into our past so that we can work for the present and create a premise for the future. Thank you.
I'm sure that you're aware of the Sharia law that exists in multiple Muslim countries, which is very strict on stripping women of their rights. Do you believe that such a problem can be avoidable in those countries, or more importantly, do you believe that the intervention from Muslim countries is needed for that to happen?
I haven't done and I haven't heard what law?
The Sharia law.
The Sharia law. Well, I believe that in Muslim countries, I'm Turkish. I also have Turkish roots, but I was born in Romania, and I know what the Muslim religion is about. And I believe that Muslim countries have a deeply embedded culture. However, I see that even in those countries, progress is being made. For example, in the Turkish world, although now the government is much more, it tends to be more communist than the previous government, there are people that empower women. For example, I take pride in not only sharing the same name with Elif Shafak, great Turkish female writer, but also we share the same commitment to empowering women in a man's world. In spite of the fact that, in spite of the deeply embedded Turkish culture that is somehow apprehensive to empowering women, her literary works have been orientated to empowering minorities as well as women. And she's the most widely read Turkish female writer globally.
Thank you. Other questions, please?
Yes, please.
There is a saying that where stands an feminist invention, there should be a woman's name. How do you feel about that? Do you think it's right, or?
Yes, I do think it's right. I mentioned in my speech about the founding fathers and founding mothers. Even the founding fathers couldn't have built the United States of America without the support of their wives. And these women are called the founding mothers. And I believe that behind every human invention and every human initiative, even if it was taken by a man, behind lies a female support. So I do believe that behind every invention lies the female power. Thank you.
We've heard 5 speakers: DOBRIN GHERGHE, ANDREI, GRÄNDINARU ALIN, MARINESCU and MEMET. Now we have the 6th speaker, NAGY LEHEL, with Take Control.
Having been listening to my fellow speakers, a very old and dear memory came to my mind. When I was about 5, my father and I had a habit. Coming home from work, my father would give me a ride on his bike around the garden. It was such a fantastic feeling. It was special. I was Dad's little hero. In those days, our financial situation was at its lowest. We were hanging by a thread, barely surviving day to day, month to month. One usual day when he arrived home, I ran to the gate and jumped on his bike. After he went on with the routine, he said, "I have a surprise for you, son." Do you even remember how you reacted to the word surprise when you were little? I sure hope so, because I was enthusiastic, frantic even, goosebumps all over my body. "What is it? What is it?" came the question of an impatient child. He went into the room and put his back down. I followed him like a lost puppy. "Dad, please, show it to me already." And he took out the smallest of things from the left pocket of his jacket. It was a Kinder Surprise egg. I don't recall having such a big burst of joy since, except maybe after my first kiss, but anyway, the fact still remains that the present, the product, which was insignificant to the company or the store on financial terms, meant the world to me. Now that I'm a bit grown up, I can tell you that this experience was defining in developing my attitude towards life. I suppose I'm not the only one with this kind of joyful childhood memory, or some of you may label it as an embarrassing one. But think about it. How many of you were so greatly influenced by it? How many of you remember it? And how many of you choose to ignore it? Imagine 2 lines. What is above represents the future, what is below the past, and caught up in between is the present. What do most of us want? Abundance, joy, success, a bright future, but how can we achieve it? Let's go one step at a time. What is the past? Merely training, I could say, what is the present? It can be defined using the simplest of words, now. And the future, the product of our actions in the now. Now listen carefully. To get the best out of our future, we need to reach our true potential in the present by learning from the past. It's as simple as that. This, the present, is where we should be mentally too, not just physically. All of us should take complete control of it, and frankly speaking, we can. I mean, we probably all have lots of mistakes and experiences to learn from. I myself have always tried to make the best of them. Even though every time I try to surprise my parents with the breakfast, I end up a child burning down half the kitchen. But I know that if I look deeper into the details, rewind everything a bit, I will find my mistake and will never ever boil eggs in a plastic bowl again. Successful people transform their worst experiences into their best lessons instead of just letting them pass. Walt Disney did the same, Steve Jobs too, and after I realized this secret of the successful ones, I wondered, why couldn't I reach my goal? What stops me? What stops us? We all have a dream. Yet some of us have kept this dream hidden from the world. We've made excuses for it, we've delayed it, we've been listening to people urging us to be realistic and let the wounds of our past limit us to where we are now. But deep down here we know that we are not living up to our potential. And life is now just passing by us. Let's look at it from the perspective of an ordinary young man just like me. A spoken word artist once asked where the wealthiest place in the world was. Do you know? It is not Switzerland nor Dubai. It is the graveyard. Because in the graveyard you will find inventions never invented, businesses never started, songs never sung, books never written, ideas never nurtured, and dreams never fulfilled. All this because they were reluctant to take a risk. Reluctant like many of us. But we are not in the graveyard yet. We have one life which never returns. In fact, we never get back any past moment. We never comb our hair or put the makeup on the same way twice. There is no rewind button in life. Once tomorrow comes, today is lost forever. Today is the most valuable asset you own, and it is the only thing you should truly fear wasting. There are mountains waiting to be climbed, peaks waiting to be conquered, and triumphs waiting for you. All that it takes is a shift in our minds. Bottom line is, make the past your best means for learning. Whatever you have been planning or imagining or dreaming of, get started today. Dream big and dare to fail, because your dreams are possible. And finally, don't ever think a Kinder Egg is only a crispy chocolate shell. Thank you very much.
So you've told us that there is no rewind button in life, but then how can you go back in time to heal the wounds from the past?
Heal the wounds?
Heal the wounds.
Well, your mind has this great, amazing ability to project ahead or to think of the memories. And that's how, there is no present moment. An unknown scientist said that there is no present moment. There is only the recent past and the immediate future. So by using this great ability of your mind, you can go back in time and think of the memories and, of course, learn from your mistakes. Thank you very much. Please.
You mentioned during your speech that the Kinder Surprise Egg meant the world to you, but don't you think that the world means more than just a Kinder Surprise Egg?
That is a good question. Well, that Kinder Egg meant the world for me because every single person in the kindergarten had one, tasted one, knew what was inside that little shell. And I was curious. Imagine a little guy, a 5-year-old guy, who was so curious. He never tasted a Kinder Egg, a surprise, never had one because of a really bad financial situation. But life is not just about how many times we don't get something, how many times we fall. But it is about how many times we lift our heads from the ground. Spit out the sand from our mouth. Look the devil in the eye. Stand up tall, face the wind, and say that I do not quit. Even if life gives you the biggest and the strongest punch, it is still not about the strength of the punch, but about you standing on how many punches you can endure while going straight forward to your goal. Thank you for your question.
Time for one more question, please. Our next speaker is NYERGES Juliana, 90%.
Ladies and gentlemen, today in my speech I'm going to look at the effects that studying history has upon you, and how by not doing it, you stagnate, that is, you remain a child. And I'm going to do that by asking two fundamental questions. One, why do we study history? And let me just admit to you that I have been subject to these questions many times before, and I'm sure you have too. History, the teachers love to justify their lessons like this. And the consensus among my peers seems to be that we study history so we learn from our mistakes and not do them again. Don't get me wrong, I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I just think that the problems portrayed in history are really, really hard to relate to. I mean, sure, now I know that if I'm ever in control of a large army, I will not march it into Russia. But that does not mean that I know how to handle with my anxiety, for example. So why do I think we study history? I think we study history for one important reason: empathy. And bear with me, I am a huge fan of empathy. Empathy is a force that can make and unmake empires, a force that can win wars. Empathy is saying, hey, I understand you. Is saying, hey, I can put myself in your shoes. Is saying, hey, I understand how you feel right now. Empathy is recognizing the legitimacy of other people's narratives. And by portraying the most serious conflicts that have marked mankind over the aeons, history is reaching out and making us empathize with people that can be centuries or kilometers away from us. So that was the first reason, the first question. How about the second? The second question is, how do children factor into this? What have they done wrong? And it turns out that no child under 4 can produce an empathetic response. Weird, I know, right? Very weird. Scientists have actually found a really interesting way to measure this. It's called the Sally Ann test. Researchers tell the kids a story about 2 girls, Sally and Ann. They have a box and a basket, and Sally also has a marble. Sally puts the marble in the box and then leaves the room. While she's out of the room, Anne takes the marble from the box and puts it in the basket. When Sally returns, the researchers ask the kids, where will Sally look for the marble? It seems obvious that she will look in the box because after all that's where she left it. But kids under 4 will insist that she will actually look in the basket because they saw it being taken to the basket, so why doesn't Sally also know? They did not recognize that Sally has a different perspective from theirs, has a different point of view. Sound familiar? Of course, kids reacted this way because they do not have a developed theory of mind. But here's the important part. You do. All of you do. You have a choice between studying history, between empathizing, or just minding your own slice of the universe. You can choose between just thinking of your own narrative and considering what other people are thinking. When I was young, I was bothered that books told you a narrative and you just had to take it, you couldn't change it. But with history, you can. You have a limited space of time where you can change something. At the end of the day, you live as many lives as stories you hear. And trust me, history is one story you do not want to miss. Thank you.
Questions, please.
Do you think that by actually studying studying history in school, a person can become more empathic with others?
I do not think that by studying history in school, because I do not agree with the way that history is being taught in schools right now, telling you to memorize dates and things that just happened. I think that we should study history by looking at different narratives, at how, for example, studying the Israeli-Palestine conflict, looking at both of those narratives and seeing how ignoring each other's narratives leads to conflict, leads to war. And I think that from that, not from dates or things that just happened, but from understanding narratives, that's how you draw the lessons. That's how history actually impacts you as a person that maybe does not have the choice to, for example, drop an atomic bomb, but as a normal person that makes regular choices. Thank you. Sure.
Thank you. So, do you think that you or me can write history? I mean, don't you think that one man is too small in the face of time?
I do not think that this narrative is a pretty pessimistic one, and it's the reason why many young people don't go to vote, because they think that one vote does not matter. But you are what history books should be all about. All of us, our shared goals, our common ideas. We should study the regular person. I do not believe in the model of history where the big man type of history, where we just study what Napoleon did, for example. I think that we should study civilization. We should study the way you think, and by thinking out of the box, like many of you have today, I think that you are doing that. You are shaping history. Thank you.
Next to speak is PLASOIANU, P.A.S.T, P.A.S.T, prone to acquire significant training.
Hello, teachers and fellow public speakers. I've been expecting you. So, how do you do? Doing fine? Well, that's outstanding. But I promise that after my speech, you'll get even better. If not, you can have your money back. So, my name is PLASOIANU, and my speech is entitled P.A.S.T. This is prone to acquire significant training. And when I say training, I mean experience. Experience which can be achieved by learning from the mistakes you've done in the past. So first of all, I'm going to talk about how important it is not to be ignorant of the past, and then whether or not it is beneficial for you to remain a child. So let's start at the beginning. I want you all, you included, to do a little exercise. When you hear the word past, do you automatically think of all the hard times and problems which overwhelmed you? Or do you start smiling? Or even giggling when you relive that precious moments that made you feel on cloud nine, and you soak in all that energy, and all of a sudden everything looks brighter? Now, if the first case is more similar to your way of thinking, then I can tell you're not the most optimistic person in the world, and therefore you'll incline to see the awful side of one situation. Even so, do not despair. This doesn't mean you have to ignore all the past events in order to get an illusory satisfaction. No. Instead, you have to be aware of what happened, to accept it as it is, and to discover the cause. The trigger which made the fiasco happen. Every single experience, pleasant or not, represents a gain. Because you'll be able to understand better how the world works, and you'll act more efficiently according to the situation you find yourself in. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And you never know how strong you are until being strong is the only choice you have. I think we all agree now that being ignorant of the past is not an option. We move on to a more complex problem. Is remaining a child a good or a bad thing? Well, a child can teach an adult three things. How to be pleased without a reason, how to never stay in one place for too long, and how to ask persuasively for something they want, said Paulo Coelho. There is not a time or an age when somebody is not a child anymore. The childhood is the only period of time when only marvelous events take place, and everybody wants to remember and go back to it. Childhood is like a movie you can watch anytime, thanks to the memories. There is, though, one misconception, according to which perfection can be achieved only by becoming mature. In fact, perfection can be achieved only by getting the right grades of childish and mature mentalities. So taking into account all of this, why not remain a child? Well, nobody said we have to give up that happiness, that energy, or that spark in your eyes, things specific to children. The only thing is that you need to develop a more complex way of thinking. Yes, that's the secret. I mean, who doesn't like playing all day long or having no worries? The same as children. Now let's get back to thinking. What does a complex way of thinking mean? Well, to make myself crystal clear, I'm going to give you an example. Does anybody know what the instant gratification concept is about? I have one more question for you. Or has anybody heard about the marshmallow experiment? Please raise your hands, you already did so. Thank you. So why don't you all join me and tell us more about this? I'm kidding. I'm going to talk about this in the following minutes. So, first of all, instant gratification means receiving a smaller reward on the spot, whereas delayed gratification involves waiting for a short period of time, but afterwards you get a more substantial reward. During the marshmallow experiment, a few children were given two options. The first one, they could get a free candy presently, or the second one, they could wait for 15 minutes and afterwards they could get 2 free candies. I think it's obvious what the aim of this test was, to see whether the little ones could think beyond the instant gratification level and whether they could anticipate the better outcome brought by the delayed gratification. Even if a few children ate their candy, the majority was able to resist the temptation, and in the end they got the bigger prize. This proves that children possess a brilliant way of thinking and analyzing things. So when I'm looking at all of this, I can find no logical reason for which somebody would want to quit being a child. In not so many words, I've reached the conclusion that being ignorant of the past may represent your biggest disadvantage due to the lack of knowledge and experience. Whereas remaining a child is the most valuable treasure someone can have, so long as the one learns how to make use and to remember all the lessons life had taught him or her so far. You've been a great audience. Thank you for your time.
They say that every game has its loss, but is the game really bigger than the loss?
Well, they say you take one step forward and 2 backwards, but even if the loss is bigger, you remain with something, at least a little thing from that whole. So even if you lost most of the parts, you still get something from that experience. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Yes, please?
Let's say you're 5 years old right now, even though you're much taller. What would you choose, the first marshmallow or wait for 15 minutes for the 2 free candies, and why?
Alright, so when the researcher would come to me and present, here you have a marshmallow, I'd certainly rush and grab it, but there's always a but, a huge but. But you could wait for 15 minutes and then get 2 free candies. Oh, I didn't know that. Thank you for that information. And I think it would be very hard for me to resist, but in the end I think I could do it and wait for that 15 minutes to pass and then get the bigger reward. Thank you. Yes, please?
We have STROE and MIRUNA with the strain.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today I am here in front of you to deliver my speech entitled The STROE. When I first started writing down the speech, I was going to tell you about the way we evolve, the way we grow up, the way we learn, and something along the lines of that. I must apologize first, for I'm not going to talk about history or the journey of life, for I believe that there are many people in this room that can teach me some more about it. I believe that I was tricked, as I expect many of you were, by this whole negative connotation implied by the saying. To be ignorant of the past is to remain a child. Most of the time said as if being a child is a crime. Who on earth would want to be doomed to remain a child for the rest of their lives, right? Well, through my speech, I aim to shed some light on the way we see innovation, the way we see creativity, the way we see childhood, and several other important aspects of our lives. Now, in order for my ideas to make sense to you, we must start at square one, which is defining the human being in itself. To save you all the trouble, I personally went through this whole list of trivial objects until I found the right analogy. I want you to imagine a speck of light with a string of memories attached to it. So in this case, the age of a human being is not defined by the number of times we went around the sun, but rather as the length of our memory string. Now that we got it over with, we must ask the fundamental question of the speech. Is remaining a child a good or a bad thing? And the first thing that pops up into my mind is, oh no, that's terrible, what about all the life experience that we could gain, or all about the things that we can learn from our mistakes? But then again, what I just said is not entirely true or false. We must remember that although the past shapes our personalities and influences our decisions without us even knowing it, we must not let this string of memories weigh us down in our everlasting race against ourselves. We must not let this string of memories stop us from evolving. You see, at the end of the day, we must not lose this childish creativity, because there are several things that we lose when we grow up. Our willingness to change, our creativity, and our perseverance. Children have this incredible capacity for innovation, mainly because they don't know how things should be yet. For example, a proper adult knows that ink should be black or blue, and that any other color is totally inappropriate. A proper adult knows how to dress. This is the reason why I'm wearing a blazer. A proper adult knows which hairstyles are normal and which are not. Also, the reason why I don't have a mohawk at present. A proper adult knows all of these things about life. Well, children don't know all of these things. Their minds are like blank canvases. They can do whatever they please with their canvas. So, why are we so afraid of becoming children again? Well, at the end of the day, the endless possibilities of the blank canvas represent our biggest fears in the beginning of humanity, which is the unknown. To illustrate a child's perseverance, I have to tell you a short story about yet another marshmallow challenge. A bunch of random people were given marshmallows, a spaghetti, tape, and they were told in half an hour to build the tallest tower with a marshmallow on top. And as some of you expected, the highest results were amongst engineers, architects, and 5-year-olds. Mainly because they don't spend all of that time planning how their tower should be like or think about the laws of physics. They just think that if my tower falls, I'm going to build it again and again and again until it stands on its own. They don't really give up when things don't go their way. What if all of those people that changed societies gave up? What if William Shakespeare lived throughout his life with the memory of a teacher telling him that, no, William, stop making up words, you're being silly? What if Picasso or Dali did the same thing when they were told that they should paint real things because that's what sells? What if Tesla stopped researching when he was told by his father that he's really tired and all of these questions about the universe are really bugging him? What if all of those people that changed society gave up on that child self that lived inside of them? I don't even want to imagine what society would look like today without children. So, at the end of the day, what is the answer to my question? Is remaining a child a good or a bad thing? And I can honestly say I have no idea. The end is somewhere in the middle. While it would be absolutely pointless to live our lives without learning from our mistakes or casting a glance at our past, well, at least that is clear, we should not let go of that child self, because that's what brings all the best things humanity has to offer. So, you see, at the end of the day, it's all about the string. Thank you for your attention.
Yes, please. How can one maintain a perfect line between being childish and being mature?
Well, there is no perfect balance. I believe that the only answer is self-doubt,
not believing that you ever reach perfection, always trying to find a balance, always trying to be a little bit childish and at the same time a bit mature. I believe that our continuous struggle to find perfection is basically what makes us better every day.
Thank you.
William Shakespeare said that the whole world is a stage. So do you think that kids can have the main role in this play?
I don't believe that kids can have the main role. I believe that they already have the main role. Mainly because we are all a bit childish. Mainly because we are all children in our own way.
So, would you be so kind to share your views on the following sentence? Those that do not learn from the past are condemned to repeat it.
Well, we all know that's true, mainly because I don't believe that, the past is a nice place to visit, but a terrible world to live in. I also believe that each and everyone learns from the past without even knowing it. I don't believe that there is really a conscious decision whether we learn from our mistakes or not. I believe it is a fundamental way of learning. So yes, those who do not learn from their mistakes are doomed to repeat it, and I believe that a mistake we make every day is forgetting that we should be a bit childlike.
Thank you.
SUCIU TUDOR, the Holy Trinity of the adults.
Honorable audience, esteemed judges, I would like to begin my speech with the following statement, which is that the human mind has a much easier time perceiving reality when it can catalog things into distinct frames of reference, which of course it constructs. And the simplest way in which this manifests is the dualities, such as the good and bad in life, the rich and the poor people, the black and white, and the list goes on. Now, do you know that this viewpoint can sometimes be rather narrow-minded? And what I mean by this is, obviously, things aren't always objectively good or bad, right? That's why we have debates weighing the pros and the cons. And also, in between black and white, there are multiple shades of grey. Some would say 50, but that's up for discussion. Now, moving on and going a bit more complex, you start seeing things in sets of three. A few examples which come to mind would be the mind, the body, and the spirit, which in many ancient cultures are what compose the human being. Or the titular Holy Trinity that I'll be talking about today, which is past, present, and future events. Now, at this level of complexity, it gets rather interesting, and what I mean by this is that you start seeing the interconnectivity of things and how they all work in unity. You all might know that the human being is obviously a single organism, and each of its components has a very specific role: the mind, the body, and of course the spirit, which not a lot of people know much about, of course. And when talking about the past, the present, and the future events, I like to see their interconnectivity as rather a continuous stream. What I mean by this, of course, is that the future, of course, all the plans that we make, all the expectations we have, forms a collective, which I like to call the thought realm. And it transcends into the present, into the physical realm, as concrete events, as material objects, and then, of course, passes on into the advent of time. And this is something that multiple personalities in human history have taken a lot of interest into. One particular man's insights I find rather relevant for this discussion, namely Albert Einstein, who claimed that the difference between the past, present, and the future is merely a persistent illusion. And I find that he does a very good job of stressing the point that I've already stressed, which is that there is no clear boundary between them. They all flow into each other, which is why many people don't even talk about the present as a singular entity. They talk about the recent past, the near future, but there is no clear distinction between them. And this is why everything you currently have, every person you know, every person you love even, is based on your past, on your events that you've experienced, on encounters that you have, and every single thing you aspire towards, everything you plan, and I'm sure lots of you have multiple plans for the future, but point is they're all based on your current perception of reality, on what you currently know about things and what you currently believe is best for yourself. Now, let's discuss exactly what are we talking about when we say the adult.
The definition of the adult I'm giving today is one person who acknowledges both the elements that make up the trinity that I'm talking about here, the past, the present, and the future, and also the person who sees them as a unity, as the totality of events which make up, of course, a human life. Now, of course, we as human beings are rather imperfect, and so we tend to fall into disharmony with ourselves more times than not. This is not necessarily because we stop making plans for the future or because we stop living in the present. Rather, we live in the present more than we should have, perhaps, but that's for later. It's because we either forget or we simply ignore the past, and this has multiple reasons. For instance, say you've been through a traumatic event and your mind protects yourself by shoving it in the back of your mind in your subconscious where it can only be accessed during recurring nightmares. Or perhaps it's rather a conscious decision that you take. You simply deny the past, or you, completely choose to forget the decision that you've made simply because you're not ready to face the consequences yet, because you're too childish. You haven't accomplished that adulthood that I'm talking about here. And another issue I would like to address here, something a lot of teenagers are dealing with nowadays, so-called YOLOing, or perhaps a rather fancy name for it, carpe diem, living in the present. Now, this inherently isn't a bad thing, but where it gets bad is when you stop seeing anything beyond the present and beyond the past, and we start especially seeing the interconnectivity of them. And of course, the fundamental issue here is that the past is an endless fountain of mistakes that you've made from which you can learn, and completely shoving that aside is simply unfair to yourself. You're shoving away everything that you've learned and everything that you should use currently. Now, another thing I would like to address is, as you all might know, Einstein once said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, which reminds me of the tale of the goldfish. You put a goldfish in a tank, he's going to swim to the edge of the tank, turn around and see a whole new adventure in front of him. He's going to swim to the other edge, turn around and see a whole new adventure in front of him because his memory doesn't last for more than 2 seconds. This is exactly what happens when you completely disregard your past. You start doing things over and over because you don't realize that you've done them already and you already know the outcome. Now, I would like to end on an advisory note. Einstein advises us to live for today, learn from yesterday, and hope for tomorrow. And with that, I thank you for listening. Yes, please.
Thank you. What plant or fruit would you compare an adult or a child to? And please justify your answer.
Thank you. I believe that I would compare a child to a bonsai tree. You know, those Japanese trees that you have to tenderly caress every now and then. And this is because a child is rather fragile, obviously. He doesn't have all the background, all the knowledge that an adult does, and therefore he's rather susceptible to making mistakes because he hasn't already made them and hasn't learned from them. And of course, an adult, I believe, would compare to a rather massive oak tree because, for instance, all the branches, of course, would represent everything that he's been through, and they all extend, symbolizing all the possibilities he's went through and all the choices he's made to reach the centerpiece, the trunk. Of course, you might think that looking at a trunk, it's very irregular, and this might compare to scars, you know, because, of course, human beings pass through rather unfortunate events, and that's what partly makes up an adult. Every unfortunate event that he's been through, and from which he had to learn in order to move on. I hope that satisfies you. Thank you.
Your speech reminded me of a quote, and I'm really curious what is your opinion about it. So it sounds like this. All matter is merely energy condensed to a slow vibration. We're all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. There's no such thing as death. Life is only a dream. And we are the imaginations of ourselves.
That is a beautiful quote, and I thank you for bringing that up. That is something that I believe you have to get to a certain level of consciousness to fully understand, right? A lot of people don't really grasp the interactions between human beings, but of course, everything in the end becomes connected. If you take the frames of reference that I've been talking about today, to a certain level, it becomes more obvious. for certain reasons, but in the end, what you say is completely true. Matter and energy are interdependent, which is something that Einstein even pointed out in his equations, which can be understood both from scientific and from a rather spiritual point of view. And about death, I think this is something that we can't quite fully grasp, but of course, as you said, matter and energy are interdependent. And something that I recall, a study recently done, has evidence that upon death, human beings lose 21.4 grams of matter, which is inexplicable to typical biological losses, such as dejections of whatever fluids. Which points out that upon death, there is a certain amount of matter, which of course can only transcend into energy, right? So that points out that there is something in us that leaves our body upon death. Therefore, I completely agree with what you've claimed today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The last 5 speakers we have heard were LEHEL, IULIANA, PLASOIANU, LUCIAN, STROE, MIRUNA, and TUDOR.
Right, so I think our judges have their work cut out for them today. We've heard some really wonderful speeches, so well done to everybody. I would like to remind you not to forget to vote for your favorite speaker. You have the list with all the names there, so please do that. And enjoy the break while others do the hard work. I bet everyone is excited to find out the results. Before we get to the actual results of the finals of the public speaking competition, some of you from last year might remember that there is another award that we give out during the finals, which is the James Mulder Award for Fluent and Creative Public Speaking. And I think we have the winner of last year's award here. Yes, some of you probably wondering why we're giving out this award. And it's James Mulder was an actual person. Yeah, well, yes, we didn't just come up with that. He was a very dear friend of the ESU, unfortunately no longer with us. But he wished to continue to support the competition, and he thought we were doing a lovely job here. So to honor his name, we're going to continue to give out this award. And this year, the James Mulder Award for Fluent and Creative Public Speaking, which consists of 1,000 lei, goes to TUDOR SUCIU. Also, before inviting Duncan to say a few words, I am also going to announce the Audience Choice Award, which this year goes to ALIN GRÄNDINARU. Okay. And now I would like to invite Duncan from the British Council to just say a few words about what we've done here today, and then we'll continue with the words.
Okay, thank you all for participating. It was of an extremely high standard again across the board. I've been judging this competition for the past 3 years now, and it was, as I've come to expect, of a very high standard. We're very aware that doing this in a language which is not your first one is particularly challenging, but I think all of you overcame that without any difficulties. In terms of what we were looking for and how we kind of decided on a winner, was we were looking for someone who was able to demonstrate demonstrate their character and their beliefs through what they're saying. It's not always easy to do, but I think what's important is that you have a very clear focus on what you want to say. Some of you had that very clearly. Some perhaps were a little bit more tried to talk very generally and didn't quite focus enough on where it perhaps needed to be. But in public speaking, you need to try and win people over with your character and make them commit to a belief that you have and that you want people to share. And that was something that we thought was important. I think it's also very important to avoid kind of formula and too rigid an approach. We really genuinely want to see character. Someone can differentiate themselves, and as I say, again, show that they're committed, not just that they're repeating the words or that they've got a good structure to their argument, that they have that character. So there is no single approach, I think. It depends on who you are, what you want to say, and you need to tailor your style and your approach to that. So I'll hand over.
Okay, thank you very much, Duncan. We're going to go backwards, so we'll start with the honorable mentions. And we have an honorable mention going to TUDOR SUCIU from Liceu Teoretic Grigore. We'll take photos at the end. Okay. Honorable mention also goes to Rareș PLASOIANU, Colegiul Național Also, honorable mention goes to ELIF MEMET from Colegiul Național. We have honorable mention going to CATALINA MARINESCU from Colegiul Okay. We have honorable mention for ANDREI GHERGHE. Honorable mention also goes to ALIN GRÄNDINARU. Honorable mention also goes to COSTIN DOBRIN.
Thank you.
The prize goes to MIRUNA STROE from Colegiul And I suspect we have two very fast greeting cards at this very moment. Second prize goes to NAGY LEHEL from Liceu Teoretic which means that NAGY will be joining Juliana Nergeș in London this year. This is a bit subjective and I shouldn't be doing this, but I want to congratulate Juliana also because this is the first time in many years now that Bucharest has finally won the national finals of the competition and that we have somebody here. So thank you, Juliana. I hope you'll do us proud in London, representing Romania. Thank you so much. Thanks. So once again, congratulations to everybody. You have done very well, all of you, and I'm sure that you will continue to be just as successful from now on. And if you'd like to bear with us for just a few more seconds, I'd like to invite our adjudicators and our 10 contestants to take a group photo, if that would be okay with you. Okay. So, thank you everybody, and I guess this was it for the 21st edition of the public speaking competition. I'm looking forward to seeing many of you next year as well in the finals, as usually come back, so hopefully the same will happen next year. And I think once again a big round of applause for everybody.
And I think also also, without this competition, this competition wouldn't have been possible. She's the person who works tirelessly to organise not only that the students are where they need to be, but also the sponsors that are providing prizes, etc. So I think the person that we really should all be thanking, and we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that person, is ALIN. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you, Duncan. Thank you, Kendall, for being with us today. And I guess this session is adjourned now.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yes.